which one this
28
is.
or 29, isn't it?
That's my favorite part of your guys' show every time is figuring
I
out
can
the
never
episode
remember
at the
what
beginning.
the hell episode number it is. It's like shit.
Once you got past 20, I think I stopped paying attention.
You were like, wow, we stuck with it long enough.
Yeah, 23 or 6 or something.
It was after 10 when I stopped remembering. I was like, damn, we made it this far, huh?
26 was the last one.
26 was the last one. All right, then we're on 27.
Okay, 27 it is.
Ready and willing.
All right.
Brian Big Ben doesn't do anything.
And we're good for this. The sheet's good?
Yeah, we should be.
Oh,
Okay.
Guys, so when we get to the offense, which one of you does prefers to do most of the talking? Like, Andrew, do you want to introduce the offensive players?
I can.
Sure. Then you're just going to say, all right, we're going to go quickly through our top 12. You drop N'Keal Harry and say what you like or don't like about him, just what sticks out the most. Dwight, put in 2 cents, going to DK Metcalf. That's quick and easy. And then Dwight, after the top 12 on offense, do the same thing, but by yourself with the defense, and then we'll move on. Everyone good?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead, Chris.
Totally on 27?
That's what Dwight says. He said it was 26.
I think. I don't know. Jeez.
All right, so now let me double check then. Son of a, because I'm gonna say 20. I'm gonna say 26 with like such conviction, and then when I go to actually load up this podcast, it'll be like 20. Oh no, this is actually episode 30.
What?
This is 30.
Damn.
Yeah,
Oh, you guys aren't weird.
You?
Stitcher again.
that is perfect timing for us. All right. All right, let's do this. Who's screaming?
Sorry. I'm gonna have to keep,
I'm gonna have cheering in the background.
I'm gonna have to keep mine muted a lot. Like I'm unfortunately have stuff going on in the
That'll
background.
make the show better. It's okay.
No worries.
I'm gonna keep mine muted for the most part. So.
I do too. No worries.
I was like, I heard cheering, and I was like, oh, did Big Ben do something?
Oh,
All right.
is anybody else lagging?
I don't think so. I hope not. Okay.
It's 4th and 15.
I know. I keep like looking at. All right, I need to get off Twitter. All right, let's do this. All right, everybody, and welcome back. This is actually episode 30 of the Dynasty Owners Manual podcast. I'm Chris Allen, your co-host, and we have. I think this is the first time we've ever done this, and especially since we've kind of expanded our brand with the Owner's Manual brand and whatnot with the Devy Owner's Manual podcast. We thought it'd be the perfect time to get both podcasts together and actually talk about some subject matter that would relate to everybody involved. Adam and I being of the Dynasty mindset, and then with Andrew and Dwight, who I will introduce here shortly, them bringing in the Devy content for some of the college players that are coming in. We decided to do a mashup show here in week 16 with a lot of folks either out of the playoffs or some sweating our matchups. We're actually recording right now during the New Orleans and Pittsburgh game, and a lot of us are switching back and forth between watching some of the game, scrolling Twitter to see who's scoring because it's late in the fourth quarter. So we will try and stay involved as much as possible. But here we are today trying to bring as much good content to you good folks that want to listen to it as possible. So as good as an introduction as that could be, I do want to bring in my co-host for today. As I just mentioned, we do have of course, first and foremost, I have my co-host, Adam Wilde, with me, along with the co-host of the Devy Owner's Manual podcast. I've got Dwight Peebles in the house with me, and also Andrew Harbaugh. So, gentlemen, I mean, how are we doing tonight? I know everybody's got, we're all kind of looking in different directions, trying to figure out what's going on in NFL right now. But how's everybody doing tonight?
Yeah, great. Just need 30 points from Damian Williams. He did it last week, right? So probably going to happen again.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, It's going good so far. 3 of 4 look like wins. How's everybody else doing with their playoff matchups and being on the outside looking in if you're not there?
Yeah, looks like I'm going to win at least one of 5. And then I have a couple celebrity eliminators I'm in. I haven't checked those yet. And we had our family Christmas today and just having fun hanging out with family and stuff. And I haven't got to watch as much college football as I'd like. That's going to be here in a couple weeks after we get past the first. But happy to be on with you guys, man.
I won one of my leagues, and I told my wife today at one of my Christmas dinners that after Baker Mayfield had 3 touchdowns and no turnovers again, that I'm going to leave her for Baker Mayfield. So whenever I can get him on the show, I'll let you guys all know.
Nice. If you can get Baker on the show, please let me know, because I'm on the same page as John Bosch, and we actually had a couple of conversations about this through DMs. Is that while we have been Cincinnati fans in the past, we are no longer in that squad. So I'm happy to jump ship and actually start rooting for the Browns, because it definitely looks like that's the squad in Ohio to actually attach yourself to if you go the tribalism route. But either way, I do think Baker Mayfield, especially after today, I think he put his stamp on Ohio at the very least, and I think that'll be something to watch for the next few years. But regardless of that, we're here to talk about. We brought you guys in, Drew and Dwight. We got you guys in here from the Devy Owner's Manual podcast to talk just about that. I mean, we have plenty of players. We got plenty of situations, college situations and narratives coming out, with some of the players already declaring for the NFL draft. We have plenty of things that we want to try and get a handle on from a dynasty aspect before we really get into it, and the real offseason begins for us dynasty owners. So really, I want to start this off as broad as possible, because at least from my perspective, when we walked into a number of these classes, regardless of which class it is, we try and characterize the class. We try and understand, okay, well, if we're trying to look for wide receivers, this is the class that you want to look for. If you want to look for running backs, this is the type of class to look for. We try and characterize the types of players and the types of talent that we see coming out in this class. So from your guys' perspective, what kind of class do you see this being overall? I mean, if you're kind of looking for players to contribute, should you be looking to load up at running back? Should you be looking to load up at wide receiver 2, tight end? I mean, what have you guys seen so far in your research to say that these are the positions that dynasty owners should be looking to invest in with this 2019 class?
Yeah, I think as far as there isn't a group that stands out as strongly as it has in the past. The wide receiver group was thought to be very strong, and it's strong, but I think it's going to be very dependent on landing spots as well as running backs, and there's not much of a quarterback. I actually really like the tight end class this year, and if you're a tight end needy team, there's definitely going to be some really good options there. There are some good running backs. There are a handful, probably about 8 to 10 wide receivers that could be first-year impact type of players depending on where they fall. So it's going to be a lot up in the air. The combine, the bowls, those guys that are playing, that's going to be very critical this year.
I guess since you just mentioned that, Andrew, I definitely want to get your opinion on the class as a whole as soon as I'm done here. But I wanted to at least talk about that real quick and get your guys' perspective, because I know that's been or get your opinion, and Adam chime in as well. But what do you guys think about some of these players that have been sitting out of the bowl games in order to declare that they know they're going to be declaring for the draft? I mean, do you guys have any opinion one way as to whether or not they should be playing, supporting their team? Do you think it really makes much of a difference with respect to their draft cost versus, or I guess their probable draft cost versus the injury risk? Or I guess I wanted to hear you guys' take on that, because really I think that if there's a way for them to get into the NFL healthy in one piece, and they do have a chance at going in the first couple of rounds or something like that, if that's their choice, I do believe that to be their choice. But I wanted to hear some of your guys' opinions and see if there's anything a different perspective from you guys.
This question makes me wish we cussed more on this show. Um, I can't stand anyone that criticizes these players for not playing in the bowl games when they have the opportunity to make millions of dollars and set up their kids and their grandkids and their grandkids by not getting injured for free. So, yeah, sit out all the bowl games. And for anyone that doesn't understand, you get to delete their number in a few months. So it doesn't really matter. They'll be watching you from the couch in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the same way. It's one of those things where, look at Jalen Smith today, had a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and he's arguably the anchor to that Cowboys defense, and the way it's been resurgent with the team as a whole is because of Jalen Smith. And he shouldn't have made it to the second round with the Cowboys, but because he gets hit late out of bounds and blows his knee out in a meaningless bowl game. I mean, I know if you're a Notre Dame fan, it's not meaningless, and same could be said with Nick Bosa getting hurt against TCU this year. If you're an Ohio State fan, you might be in the playoff if he came back. But at the same time, they're sacrificing their bodies. If you need to know why, go watch Concussion, and you can see why. It's not just knees getting hurt, but until they get paid or compensated in some way, they don't owe the university or anybody anything. So I'm all for it. You go get paid, you go get that money, because I can't, so why can't you? And it's not fair for anyone to criticize them either. I'm heated about that as well, Adam.
Right, I agree with both of those guys. The fan part in me wants to see them play, especially if it's like a meaningful, like a New Year's Eve game or one of the playoff games. But other than that, I don't see any reason for them to even play. But there is the fan side of me that would like them to play, and it's gonna hopefully tip the balance of power and get these guys paid, because I think they need to be paid. But that's a whole other show.
So, guys, we're going to get into the practical application of the show. What we want to do first here is we want to take the top 12 right now for you guys. This is kind of a consensus top 12. Andrew's going to guide us through the offense, and we'll just take the biggest thing that stands out from each player in their top 12 currently. And then after that, Dwight's going to guide us through some of the top defensive players for you IDP folks on his own. So from here out, Andrew, go ahead and take over for this top 12.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Adam. And thank you, Chris, too, for both of you for having us on so we can do this for you, everybody. One of the most electric players, I'd say, that's going to be in the draft, the one that everyone talks about just because you see him on the SportsCenter top 10 all the time, is N'Keal Harry from Arizona State, the wide receiver. He has great hands. He has great leaping ability. He has great ball skills. All that's going to make him be a potential playmaker at the next level. The only thing that everyone's kind of waiting on is to see how fast he is and get a 40 time on him, which everyone will get come the combine, as long as he runs it there or his pro day. That's his biggest thing, is his separation and his speed. If he can answer that, he might come out of this being the wide receiver one. And like, just to go back a little bit here, this wide receiver class, like Dwight said, is decent. It's just everyone's got questions, which leads me into the next guy here being DK Metcalf from Ole Miss. Ole Miss realistically has 3 wide receivers, one of them being Metcalf, that could be at the top of the board here at this class. Biggest thing with Metcalf is if he comes out of the combine with no medical red flags, he should be without a doubt the wide receiver one. He'll go across the middle. He'll stretch you vertically. He has the good hands. He has the ball skills. He has everything you want to be a top wide receiver. He could potentially even be a wide receiver one. Out of Michael Thomas. I'm not saying he'll be a Michael Thomas, but when I watch him, from what I have, that's what I think of first. And then his teammate, A.J. Brown. My biggest thing on A.J. Brown, and it's actually what you guys had me on to talk about, was the article where I compared the two. I'm not as high on A.J. Brown as a lot of people are. A lot of people I've seen have him as the wide receiver one. He's speedy, his footwork, he's able to stop on a dime. His route running is a big concern to me. He runs a lot out of the slot, so he has a very limited route tree. And then the other thing too I've noticed is he doesn't necessarily perform that well against top flight competition in the SEC, such as Alabama, LSU, Auburn, teams like that. And as I mentioned, Alabama, they got running back Damian Harris. they have several running backs there. Josh Jacobs, who if he declares could make a case being at the top of this running back class, but nobody's heard anything on him. And then with Damian Harris, because there's so many runners at Alabama and because they finally were able to pass the ball for the first time in so many years, Damian Harris has kind of slipped under the radar a little bit. I like his size. I like his instincts. I like his running ability. Biggest thing that's going to hold him back for people is just because you don't hear about him on that Alabama team, because he's not a pass catching back. He's just kind of a third down and goal line sort of situation guy. But that's just because Tua has been so fantastic this year. And then my diamond in the rough, I think, in this whole thing is, and you could take him at 101 in a rookie draft, is tight end Noah Fant out of Iowa. He has the size, he has the ball skills, he has the blocking, he has – Dwight's laughing at me, but I love Noah Fant. I really do. I have one league where I know I have the first pick next year. I've already told everybody that don't offer me anything, don't do anything. It's going to be Noah Fant. So, because that's what I need as a tight end.
Andrew.
No, nobody else has taken my Noah Fant. I got Baker Mayfield and Noah Fant in my life, and then I'll be good. So if you need a tight end, or if you're in a tight end premium league, I think he's worth a 101. And you're laughing, but I'm telling you, when I'm wrong potentially in 3-4 years, then we can look back on this. Dave Montgomery, he's right now probably my RB1 in this class out of Iowa State. I really like him a lot, and circumstances have made this necessarily a bad comp. But as far as on the field, David Montgomery reminds me a lot of Kareem Hunt coming out of Toledo. I like same size body, same pass catching ability. They've shown a little bit. He's shown a little bit of a quickness at times, but he can also kind of be a bruiser. So Montgomery has a lot of flexibility depending on what team he goes to. And then speaking of red flags, you got Rodney Anderson, running back out of Oklahoma. He's had a broken leg. He's had neck issues towards ACL this year. There's some red flags potentially off the field as well. All that being said, if he can come out of it and teams trust him, I expect him to have a big fall just because of the injury history and the off the field stuff. He could sneak into a second, third round rookie draft if someone really doesn't believe in him. But I think once drafts start going and combine and where he goes could also affect, he could sneak up into an early first round pick for a Devy league. Somebody that is really starting to jump up boards too, I've noticed a lot more people are picking up on him, is Darrell Henderson, the running back out of Memphis. Averaged over 8 yards a carry this year, almost 9. Had 1,800 yards going into the bowl game that he decided to sit out, which is good because now we don't have to worry about him having some weird injury. So I really like Darrell Henderson as far as his quickness and outside running ability. Kelvin Harmon is a wide receiver that everyone's kind of forgetting about, I think. He's just getting kind of lost in the mix because everyone's seeing the bigger names with the A.J. Browns, the DK Metcalfs, and N'Keal Harrys. Harmon's just a smoother out runner with good hands, and he's just more of that Mr. Reliable sort of Hines Ward type. It has sort of an old school comp. I'm sure Chris would know, being a Bengals fan, how much fun Hines Ward has been over the years.
Yeah, don't remind me.
But and then Dwight's favorite player on this list, we go to the Michigan running back, Karan Higdon, and he's sitting there shaking his head. Oh, poor old Michigan State Dwight. I really have been pounding the table for Karan Higdon. If you've listened to Devy Manuel, I like him a lot. I like his size. I like his workload that he's shown he can handle. 2 years ago, he was able to do 20 carries a game and not really show that he gets tired, do 200 yards a game, and he'll be able to handle it and still be fine the next week. This year, he was able to kind of take a step back because they got the passing game with Shea Patterson rolling. So he'll be coming into the NFL having a little bit more fresh legs. And after all that, I need a drink.
That's a list right there.
But that's a couple names, a handful of names, really, just to get you an introduction here of who to look for. I'm sure if you have anybody or more questions, me and Dwight, or our rankings, the Devy Manuel, we go into it even more. But those are who you're going to see probably going in your first round of your rookie drafts.
And before we hit on the IDP side of the things, just a disclaimer, that's not quite Andrew's order.
No, thank you.
Quite a bit. So what we're trying to do right now is just get listeners associated with different names, where they're from, what they've done. And there's no real point in ranking them in any specific order, more like tiers at this point. Until the season gets out, we see that these guys get out without injury or how they're recovering from their injuries. But yeah, now Dwight, you want to go ahead and take us to the IDP side of things and let us know what our IDP rookie drafts are going to look like early on, please.
Absolutely, man. You're going to see, if you've read any mock drafts and you've heard anything from the pundits at this point, it is a very heavy defensive draft. We need an infusion of defensive talent in the league. Hopefully they know how to tackle quarterbacks right, or else they're just going to be ending up, the penalties and everything. But everybody's, there's a lot of comparisons that Nick Bosa is actually better than Joey Bosa. He's pretty much the consensus 101 at this point for the actual draft. And I think if you have a defensive draft, if you have a mixed league, you'll see defensive players typically start going in the second round of a mixed draft. So he'll probably be one of the first to go. Quinnen Williams from Alabama is a name that came out of nowhere in the offseason. He's going to be probably the second or third pick as well. He's a monstrous defensive tackle that does just about everything. He's actually my favorite. If I had to build a defensive line around, I would build it around him as opposed to Bosa, but that's just a preference of mine. Like the guys that are more than just a rusher. Josh Allen from Kentucky. He's an amazing, amazing young player. Outside linebacker, just rushes the passer, just wreaks all sorts of havoc all over the field. Incredibly fun to watch. He'll be a first-round pick. Greedy Williams from LSU is a really good cornerback. He's got really good size. Good size for a cornerback. I think he's 6'2". He's very long, very good, very quick. Sorry, guys, got derailed a little bit. He's a lot of fun to watch. He just does not get thrown at in college. He's an amazing prospect. He'll go in the top 10 as well. Cullen Farrell's another defensive end. This guy's from Clemson. He's huge, and just moves bodies and masses, incredibly strong, quick, just like Ed Oliver from Houston, another defensive end that's going to go right up there. All six of these guys should probably go in the top 10 to 12. Devin White is probably the top linebacker in the class from LSU. Prototypical three-down linebacker. He can cover the tight ends, running backs. Great tackler. He was a running back coming into LSU and converted to a linebacker. And you can see the way he moves. He's very fluid, very, very fun to watch. Byron Murphy from Washington, is the second cornerback in my book. Great cover linebacker. He's God, guys, sorry. Headful here. All right. I don't know how you did that, Andrew. Good Lord. All right.
I just talk a lot. You can ask my wife.
You do. You do talk a lot. You definitely anchor our show. All right. Byron Murphy's a really good cornerback. He'll go in the top, probably 15 to 20 as well. Deontay Thompson's the top safety. He's from Alabama. Just one of those, the new age safeties that can come up in the box, can cover the slot, can go out can play free safety and roam out there in the center field, and just does everything, and comes from a pro style defense in Alabama. It's really good coaching. Ja'Kai Polite is from Florida, is a very good edge rusher. Andrew's boy. Incredibly fun to watch as well. He's one that's gotten a lot better this year and will definitely benefit from some NFL coaching. DeAndre Baker from Georgia is another one of those safeties that can kind of does everything. He might be more of a slot corner in the NFL, but has the ability to do everything. And my last guy on the list is kind of a fun name, O'Shane Ximines from Old Dominion. Just a sack monster. And comes from a small school. So he's very raw and will need some coaching as well. But you watch him on the tape, and he's just fun to watch. He's so quick and just tears around the end, and just he just has this like vengeful streak in him. He's a lot of fun to watch. So that's my top 12 at this point. And all those guys are going to be gone in the first round. I mean, it's no in the NFL draft. And some of them will be good IDP players as well. IDP doesn't translate as well, especially on the defensive line. Sometimes you get guys that are highly regarded and highly drafted that won't be as much of a factor in IDP, but that's a whole lot more information.
Good job, guys. That's extremely valuable information. Now, Dwight catches his breath. I just want to remind everyone, take your time with those two lists and go ahead and take notes if you need to. And the IDP side matters, even for people who aren't playing IDP, because you're going to have players matched up against these players next year. So knowing these players can provide a competitive advantage next year, just like you might have known Denzel Ward might have been a great cover corner. And this year he's kind of wreaked havoc. He's done a great job. So that's going to lead me into my next question. And then Chris is going to have a very important question for both of you. And Andrew, just to give you a heads up, you cannot pick Noah Fant for that answer. But what I want to ask both of you, starting with Andrew, why is it so important to start this scouting process now in your dynasty leagues?
I would say the biggest thing is, and I was telling my wife to keep tying her in. I think it's just because I had that divorce poll up the other day as an apology. But I was telling her, I said, come January through April, I'm going to be watching all these different players. And she's like, oh, that's great, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah. And then I said, come May, I got to make a whole new list of players. So it's one of those things where if you get a head start, like not everyone in your league is looking at draft stuff right now. And if you are like me in my one league and I have the number 1 overall pick and I've known I'm going to have that for a while because I have a lot of players on the IR, then you need to start getting ready to be like, hey, who can I get that I'm going to be a championship contender? Who am I going to get into the playoffs? So it's one of those things where just like anything, if you don't prepare for it, you're just going to go into it blind and be like, oh, well, this guy's on the Falcons and then he must be good because he's a receiver and then he's going to be with Matt Ryan and that's it. But if you don't know what type of receiver he is and how he's going to complement Calvin Ridley and potentially Julio Jones, then that's going to be where you're going to lose out in that sense. So that's why you've got to really dig in and look at these players. I'm not saying have a list of 100, 150. Leave that for everyone else to do. But just kind of get an idea of, hey, when you're on the clock in round 3, 4, or 5, they talked about this guy on Devy Manual. And if they talked about him, what did they say? And then just kind of let it click for you. That's why we're here.
My difference is actually a little bit different than that. I think the noise that you're going to hear is gotten incredible. When you talk between Twitter and ESPN and The Athletic, whatever sites you read, I've seen no less than 12 mock drafts in the last 2 weeks. And then you got the combine, and everybody's going to be chattering about that. The noise that you're going to hear about these prospects is going to be insane. And you're going to have guy A over here. You have us saying this, you know, Matt Miller saying this, you know, Kuiper saying this, and it's just going to be all over the place. And everybody will say, this is good, but this is bad. This is good. You know, and then the other guy will say, this is good. This is bad. It's good for you to form your own opinion. I like to watch the players aside from the combine because the combine is just a little tiny fraction of what they can do. Sure, they're an athlete, but how many athletes you know that can't play a lick of football? I mean, you know, and how many guys that are just insanely good at football but can't, you know, master all the little tiny tasks like that, you know, like, so it's good to have your own opinion as well and use that as a piece of everything, a piece of the puzzle, and use that along with the combine, along with the landing spot and all that, and formulate your own opinions. I like to do my own research and I listen to what other people say, but I like to have my own opinions as well.
On that combine note, I will add, just because it's the sexy drill at the combine, the 40-yard dash, it doesn't mean that guy is going to be a good receiver or a good running back. That just means they can run really fast in a tight Under Armour suit in a straight line.
Well, so, hold on a minute. Are y'all trying to tell me that John Ross is not going to be a good wide receiver?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he shouldn't have been in the top 10 that year.
Right.
But he broke the 40 time.
He didn't win the island, though.
But still, though.
Did he break the 40 time if he didn't win the island?
He did.
To acknowledge that it's completely ridiculous for them to not run in pads. Like, how hard would it be for them to just put pads on and do the exact same thing?
And Jerry Rice was slow. Come on.
Yeah, Jerry Rice was slow. Nuke
By
was
standards was slow. Yeah.
Yeah, Nuke was slow.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been plenty of wide receivers. I mean, just absolute like beasts. I mean, well, I'm trying to remember what AB ran. His was like what 4.4, 4.5, something around there.
It wasn't very impressive. I mean, it was a late pick.
It doesn't really show that he's more quick anyways, but he's just smoother and better than everyone else. If you saw his catch that, thank goodness, didn't count today.
Yeah.
AB ran a 4.47.
There it is. All right. So I guess my question, though, and I do agree with both you guys in your sentiments regarding drafting or scouting now, because market saturation is a real thing. I mean, while we do appreciate everybody coming and listening to our dumb podcast, I mean, there are going to be 8 million different voices out there having their opinions on a lot of these prospects. So getting into it now and doing your own research, listening to smaller folks like ourselves, going back and forth over some of these players would serve you well come February, March, when the ruckus gets too loud for you to actually hear your own self think when it comes to looking at how these players may or may not perform, and then forget about it once the combine comes. All you're going to hear is measurements 40 times, how quick they can run, how many drills they do well in, and all that shortly before the actual draft happens, and then it's just absolute chaos afterwards. But Andrew, I did have a couple of questions for you, at least on the offensive side of the ball, just regarding a couple of players here. So we already had a discussion on DK Metcalf and N'Keal Harry, I believe, when we talked to you on our podcast a couple months back. But if we were to actually just focus in on your guy, Noah Fant, I want to talk team fits, because I'm trying to understand at least that specific player, what they do well, and where you could kind of see specifically where you could see their skills translating to in the NFL, so I can get a gauge in my mind as to how I would want to, or how much I would want to invest in that player. Assuming everything works out, combine goes well, no injuries or anything like that. Just for one of the players on your list, and I'm going to pick Noah Fant because I know that's your boy. So tell me more about Noah Fant and where you could see him going and excelling if he gets. I'm assuming he gets drafted this upcoming draft.
I think the ideal situation, and you could say this for any tight end of the draft, is New England. You don't know what's going to happen with Gronk, whether the way he's been playing the last couple of weeks, he kind of looks like a broken down car that you keep patching the tires on and just sending it out there. I think any tight end goes to New England, it's going to be insane number-wise. But if you send someone like Noah Fant to New England, then I think the production Gronk had is a total realistic option for what Noah Fant could do. Another place I like, but it probably won't happen because they don't have a first-round pick, is Dallas, just because they have that need at tight end. They really have missed Jason Witten a lot this year. I don't see him slipping into the second round, especially late in the second round where they would be picking. And then as far as just a sneaky pick, and this is just kind of more someone if the Giants are going to keep investing in Eli Manning for one more year, and the quarterback class is not going to be that special like everyone thinks, you got Odell Beckham, you got Saquon Barkley. I think if you threw Noah Fant with him in New York, I think that would be interesting because Odell's going to stretch it, and Saquon, everyone's going to be focused on at the line of scrimmage and in the linebacker groups. Noah Fant can just feast.
Are you saying Evan Ingram isn't special?
I'm saying he is, but a lot of people could go two tight end sets. And again, I'm not trying to keep making comps with bad players. But look at New England when they had Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. Those two were top 12 tight ends every year just because they were able to help each other out. Ingram's more of like the vertical stretch tight end. Like you could put him out in receiver and you wouldn't even notice a difference. Fant could still block, which is why I think he would complement Ingram very well in New York.
Yeah, I meant to ask you about Noah Fant's blocking prowess? Is he a pretty solid blocker as well?
Not a lot of tight ends anymore really block, especially at the NFL level. In college, you kind of see it more just because those fits. Different programs don't always use the tight end in such a passing way. And Iowa does have TJ Hawkinson, which is another potential top tight end guy, but he hasn't declared yet. He's a redshirt sophomore. But Noah Fant, I think, is the best blocker in the top tier of tight ends as far as what you could see with fantasy production. There's tight ends on the back end of the rankings that are going to be better blockers. They're going to be drafted for that purpose. But if you want Noah Fant in fantasy, he's going to get more playing time because he can block. So that's an underrated tool that he has in his arsenal.
And I think that could work. Sorry, Dwight.
Oh, it's okay. The mock drafts I've seen have him going, almost every one of them have him going to Oakland in the mid-20s. And I've seen a couple with Houston as well. I think I like Oakland. I actually don't mind Carr, though, so most people can't stand him. So.
I don't mind Oakland either. I mean, they have Jared Cook there, but he's kind of on the tail end of things, so that wouldn't be a bad spot either.
Yeah, I like that call. The Houston one I do like. I'm not sold on who do they have right now? Ryan Griffin and Jordan Thomas, I believe Jordan Thomas. Yeah,
and 3 young guys, so you really just need one of them to emerge. But I mean, Noah Fant would stomp all 3 of them.
Yeah, I agree on that point. But I think there is something to what you were saying earlier, Andrew, about teams running 2 tight end sets. So if the Giants, I'm not sure, I'm not totally sold on this coaching staff and if they are as forward thinking as we would like them to be. But we've already seen Philadelphia has switched to running 12 personnel on a decent amount of their plays with Goddard and Ertz being on the field. So they've actually been able to sell that quite well and move the offense, I think, fairly efficiently, running those 2 tight end sets. So if more teams wanted to incorporate that sort of offensive scheme, which, I mean, clearly seems to be working out for Philadelphia, looking at St. Nick actually just completely crushing it today, I do think that would be something that could work out for them. But regardless of where he winds up at, I think Fant is going to wind up being, I mean, one of those names that I know that everybody this past season, I mean, it was Gesicki, it was Goddard. I mean, as were those tight ends that people were really looking for in the draft. So I think that Fant can wind up with, I'm hoping he winds up with a similar amount of hype. And even the 2 tight ends that got drafted by Baltimore. But I think that's something that we can look forward to, like, in the next couple of months. But a similar question to you, Dwight. So I know that I'm just going to cheat and say that because I'm from Ohio, I will focus in on the Ohio native, Mr. Bosa, and I know that he's one of those guys that actually fit into the mold of what we were discussing earlier in terms of players that are going to be, sitting for their bowl games. I mean, he's injured. I mean, looking at his particular situation, one, I mean, how early do you really see him being drafted? Because I can't even remember. So he sat out for, I forget how many weeks he wound up sitting out for, came back, and then now he's not going to be playing in the bowl game. So with his particular situation, one, how early do you see him being drafted? And then 2, where do you see a fit for him? I mean, given his skill set, similar to his brothers.
Right. I mean, he's going to be the first overall pick unless somebody does something drastically silly and moves up to number 1 for someone. But even then, I think he's still going to be the first pick. He's a generational defensive end. One of those, you hate using terms like that, but he's one of those guys that's going to make a difference, like his brother. I think Arizona's pretty much locked into the first pick at this point, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they can even win next week and they'd probably still have it. And they have some interesting pieces on the defensive line already with Marcus Golden and trying to think but they're going, I mean, he's such an impactful player that you can't pass him up at that point. I could see a team maybe moving up for him, but I don't think so with as deep as this defensive line class is, and as many talented pass rushers as there is. I don't think anybody's going to move up for him. I think the Cardinals are just going to get him unless somebody like the Giants decides they want to go get Dwayne Haskins at 1 or some silly thing like that, So I don't see there's any way he's not 101 this year.
Right. So for you personally, I mean, for you being our resident IDP expert, I mean, if you're sitting there at the 101 in your draft, is he the guy that you're picking up without question?
If it's only defensive players, yes. Yeah, I think so. I think linebackers tend to be a little more valuable. So you could make a valid case for Devin White. And I've seen Devin penciled to go to the Bengals in most mock drafts, which I would absolutely love. They definitely have it. They have a need there really bad for that, especially in that division. And you would be hard pressed not to take him because he's just a guy that's going to get 120, 130 tackles every year, throwing a small handful of sacks. And I mean, he's going to be that type of guy right off the bat. Whereas Nick Bosa, he's going to be great, but pass rushers tend to be a little streaky, and you don't see too many go like that high in defensive drafts. But for the most part.
And now, Andrew, same question for you. So you're sitting at the 101. I mean, who is your 101 for the 2019 class? I mean, assuming ideal situations like they wind up coming to fruition in terms of landing spots, no injuries, things of that nature.
Yeah, tell us more about Noah Fant, Andrew.
Yeah, not Noah Fant. It can't be Noah Fant.
You're good. Man, if everything came out perfect out of combine injuries and all that stuff, I'd probably say DK Metcalf would be my 101. Because my biggest thing, as long as his neck's okay, I mean, you see Mike Williams now with San Diego. He came out of college pretty much same neck injury, not as Metcalf's wasn't as severe as Mike Williams. So Mike Williams has bounced back from a more severe neck injury, and he's producing finally. And wide receivers take a little bit. They take a year or two. But I think if Metcalf goes to the right place and everything lines up perfectly, like you're saying, I would say DK Metcalf in most drafts is going to be 101.
Refresh my memory real quick, because I remember we discussed him on our episode, but where do you see him going? I mean, how early and like what team do you see him going to?
I'll see him probably going in the teens as far as the team that could be in the mix for him. If he might slip a little bit just because teams might be trading up for pass rushers. I know Bosa's going to go number 1, but then you got 9 others who could fill in between now and then. I could see Oakland trading one of their extra firsts to move back up into the first round to get him to replace Amari Cooper. I could see someone like oh my gosh, complete brain fart. Oh, Cleveland. I wouldn't mind Cleveland taking him just because they've got Jarvis Landry and they've got Callaway. Perryman's having a career resurrection, which I think's going to be just for the last couple games here. I think they need one more weapon to complement Baker. So I think Metcalf would be a nice stretch there. And then if they could move Jarvis Landry back to the slot and make all the fantasy players happy again.
Okay. And I'm definitely with that. And then last question for the two of you guys before we get on out of here, because Sunday Night Football is about to start. And I know that Adam has some players going. He's probably going to be sweating for the rest of the night, drinking Bud Light Limes and other trash alcohol like that. But Andrew, I mean, just to keep you on the hot seat real quick, when it comes to, I know we always want to talk about sleepers. I know that sleepers is a term I think is completely outdated because with the age of information being as it is, there really aren't any more sleepers. But with that being said, if you were to pick out a sleeper for this class, somebody that you're looking for to maybe either pop in the combine and maybe make one of those last-minute pushes in order to improve their draft stock, whether it be through their bowl game and combine or something like that. I mean, who are you really watching for to really make a splash and maybe show something that you believe that the talent that they have, but nobody is really talking about them yet?
Wait, you want to go first for your IDP?
All right, hold on.
You're good. I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
Sorry, man. Yeah, there's a couple linebackers that I really, really like coming out of here. Khalil Hodge from Buffalo has the small school profile that he came from Buffalo, which is where Khalil Mack came from. And he's also he's a different type of linebacker. He's very quick, instinctive. I see one that he'll be jumping up he's got gaudy college stats, but he's one that will probably do really well at the combine. There's a couple guys. Rashawn Gary's going to kill the combine, I think. He's an athletic freak, although I don't have as much faith in what his actual ability is, but that's just me. I see him routinely going in the top 10 or 15, but he's one that'll probably kill the combine. Montez Sweat from Mississippi State, Brian Burns from Florida State, a couple guys that are pass rushers that are going to look to make that an impact in this class that will probably do very, very well in the combine. And Jalen Ferguson from Louisiana Tech just broke the NCAA career sack statistic. I don't know how you want to call that. Career sack record. There you go. Sorry about that. Jalen Ferguson from Louisiana Tech, who just broke the career sack record. He's one that is kind of lower name on the radar, come from a smaller school, and he's going to be one of those guys that does really well in the combine and really makes a name for himself and could jump up in the top 15, 20 consideration at defensive line.
Now, Dwight listed DeAndre Baker from Georgia in his potential first round for IDP guys. If I told you there was a guy this year that had 15 catches for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns against probably a top 3 corner in this rookie class, top 12 player overall defensively, I would think he's going to be doing some pretty good things in the NFL. And that's where I'm going to introduce you, and I'll pound the table again. He'll be one of my pound the table guys. That's what we'll trademark this as. Andy Isabella, wide receiver from UMass. On the year, he was a Blitnikoff finalist, 100 catches, 1,697 yards, 15 touchdowns out of UMass. And the problem is he played at UMass. The other problem is when I watch Andy Isabella, his quarterback has a throwing motion that's similar to Blake Bortles and Tim Tebow's. So the fact that he's able to catch 101 should speak to his talent level as well. He's not a giant guy. He's 5'10", 190. He will be at the Senior Bowl, which is where I think he's really going to flourish. Senior Bowl practice, he'll be able to jump up and catch a lot of people's eyes. I think he'll do well at the Combine. He could slip into the first round of the NFL draft, and the second come April. So he's one that I think is really going to start to shoot up, and that everyone should keep an eye out for.
All right, I think that's perfect. Adam, do you got any notes or anything for the folks before we wrap things up for tonight?
Yeah, just want to consider this episode the start of the 2019 offseason, and it's going to be a very fun one. Of course, shows slowed down a little bit during the actual football season as we sweat all our week's matchups, and really want to leave room for you all to be listening to the fantastic weekly shows that you need to get you where we are right now. So we appreciate everybody that's been sticking around, and spread the word to people who haven't been sticking around, and let them know this is the place to be for your Dynasty offseason. You can find me still at DHH_Adam. Please follow the Twitter handle at Dynasty Manual. And then you can also get with us on YouTube. Our shows are live, and you can find us at Dynasty Pregame. We appreciate you listening and looking forward to a great offseason.
Yeah, 100%. And so for the fellows over at Devy Owner's Manual Podcast, where can they find you guys and your work and whatnot?
For the actual podcast, we are at Devy Manual. We also have Devy Owner's Manual at gmail.com. If you want to send us over some screenshots, just email us questions, whatever. I myself am at FF Peoples Champ on Twitter, and I'm on there all the freaking time. So if you drop me a message, I'm sure we'll get back to you pretty quick. Andrew?
Yeah, no, you can find me on Twitter at DHH_man. And for anyone who hasn't listened to us yet, and they're going to be listening to Chris Adam here, because we've both got some great things here, I promise you, me and Dwight are going to be diving into a lot of fun stuff. We're going to try to get you guys interacted that are listeners to see what we can do to help you out. And I just have a lot of fun planned. I don't want to get on a rant because then I'm going to be making Adam lose his mind with Damian Williams. Promise you, if you haven't tuned in, starting the new year when me and Dwight kind of get things revamped, it's going to be the time to do it.
Absolutely. So I thank you guys for coming out. And I think this was exactly what we need to do for the Owner's Manual brand. I think this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation to really get into the upcoming class and understand who's coming out, and then how we as dynasty owners can really start to shift our priorities and our resources so that we know the players that we're supposed to be picking up. So that's absolutely perfect. Well done, gentlemen. And I'm Chris Allen. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. And I'll be retweeting pretty much everything that these guys are going to be putting out. So definitely look for any of the stuff that these guys are going to be putting out, like from our handle at the Dynasty Manuals podcast. So we thank you, everybody, for coming out and listening to us. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Great job, gentlemen.